and I am as ripped as I've been in my entire life at age 35.
Really? Sweet. Are you lifting at the fire station?
Oh no. Oh no. I have not been in a gym in a year
Are
probably.
you just like running and whatnot?
Oh no. I'm not working out
Are
at
you
all.
just ripped? Is what you're saying?
So I tore down part of our barn.
And then you did that trail work.
I did the trail work.
Okay, cool. I see what you're
I built the patio. I tore down the deck, and now I'm like over the last month I've been hauling fieldstone, and I've hauled like 30 tons of fieldstone in the last month. Like 2 or 3 days a week, I'm just like rucking fieldstone up and down.
Sweet.
And I'm as ripped as I've ever been in my life. It's crazy. I'm not as big. I was bigger like when I was a firefighter. I was like 20. I have been 20 pounds heavier, but
Yeah.
it's nuts. Yeah.
I'm like,
dude, why didn't I just
no, that's
go
that's the thing
so
is
dumb.
like, and like, I think you and me are the type of people where like that type of work is more fulfilling to us anyway. You know, like I was just convinced by people when I was younger that what I needed to do was get into like management basically, because it's like that's where the money was. And like the whole time I was like basically a landscaper and doing that type of shit. I was jacked and I was outside all day. I was healthy, like, and then I went to school and I was like, this fucking sucks. And ever since I haven't been able to decide on a thing I want to do. So it's like, like it's not only like, I don't know, it's just for certain people for sure, but it's just like, holy shit, man. I don't understand. Like, there's some people who don't want to be jacked and don't want to be outside, and then they should just go become managers for sure. But
oh yeah, I would be 0% surprised if I got to heaven and he was like, yeah, how was life? And I was like, yeah, it was all right, dude. And he's like, yeah, it was only all right. I don't know why though. I fucking showed you all of the awesomest stuff. Like, did you not like putting on a suit 5 days a week? Why would you? I've put you outside all the time. You looked jacked. You had tons of fun. You were tan. It was awesome. You built things. And then you just would put that shit away because it was Monday, and you'd put on fucking khakis for no reason at all. Yeah, I would totally be like, dude, yeah, you're totally right.
yeah,
I biffed it.
that's real fair.
I was having that conversation with Amanda the other day because I'm looking for like a job like that. And I bought a trailer a little bit ago, like a utility trailer. And I was talking about things I was going to do to it to like, you know, put like a wood floor in it and stuff. And I was like, man, I could totally fit a riding lawnmower on there and like a couple weed eaters. And I was like, dude, if I hadn't just graduated college, I would totally try to start a handyman business. But it's like, well, I fucking went to college. Why I'd be an idiot to be a handyman, and I wouldn't even ever need to read again.
Oh my god,
I mean, she'd be pretty pissed at me. But yeah, wouldn't that be so much better if you were? Could you imagine being like one of those one-man handyman businesses with like your number on the side of your truck? Like in the letters, sticker letters that you got at like Lowe's.
You answer to no one,
like,
make $80K, you're jacked as hell.
No.
You can fix everything at home, so all that stuff's cheaper. Like you have a lot of connections to other people who do that type of work. You can have like the classic redneck conversation. I'm like, I've been having a debate with myself if this is like a redneck conversation or like a poor people conversation, and like where the line is. It's hard to decide, but like I was like listening to some people I would say were rednecks for sure the other day, and I heard a type of conversation that I've heard like a million times in my life, which is like they were talking about a standard object that you can go to the store and get a standard replacement for, but instead they talked an hour about all the ways over their life that they've jerry-rigged it. So, like, you know, like, rednecks will, like, get together and they'll talk about all the things they do to make their four-wheeler battery last way longer, instead of, like, just going that were, like, complicated and took hours and, like, a lot of handicraft, instead of just going to the store and buying another battery. I'm not speaking either way on them, but I just think, like, you'd have you'd get to have those conversations all the time, which is also kind of seems exciting because they'll make it like an hour-long discussion out of drapes. Like they'll just be like, yeah, like I didn't want to get one of them poles to hang it up, so I thought about like, you know, cutting into the wall and like screwing another 2x4 in there and just kind of having it come out a little bit. But I didn't really like the color of that, so then I decided to shave it down a little bit. Had to get some of my more working tools out, but luckily my dad taught me a lot about that when I was a younger guy. And it's like an hour's gone by, and all they fucking did was put up curtains. It's insane. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. I was thinking the other day when I was like, I've been the last couple of weeks. I've been thinking quite a lot about how like, man, I wish I was just a lawnmower or whatever. I think about it like so much, and then I'll like come home and I'm like, I'm applying for the job of like business development data analyst associate, and I'm just like, ugh. But I was thinking, like when I was thinking about like what the actual thing that I like doing is while I'm out there, and I was thinking about that, how it's like engineering, where I'm like thinking of like what needs to be made, or like what would fit, what would solve this problem, whatever. Like it's engineering, and I was like, man, I should have studied engineering in school. And then I was like, no, I shouldn't have. I'd have been the same bullshit. Like that, I had like the two thoughts like back to back. I was like, oh, I should have studied engineering. That's what I like doing. And I'm like, no, I'd fucking still wear khaki. Be some other bullshit. Welcome back, kids. By now you know the deal. I'm Trey. That was Joe. Coming up, you're going to hear Dan. And when we're all on tape, you're listening to an episode of A Strong Disagree. Today we're talking about billionaires and self-driving cars. Should be a hoot. As always, we hope you enjoy the episode. We hope you're enjoying your life, and we thank you for stopping by. Oh, dude, speaking of all of that, did you guys see that Elon Musk sent a convertible to Mars with like a robot in it?
Yeah, yes.
I did. Cherry red.
That's so fucking
did you guys
badass.
See the live stream of the car floating through space on its way to Mars?
I did not. I did not.
I didn't see the live stream. I just saw pictures from it.
Yeah,
it looked fucking awesome.
It ended, I guess, after like 4 hours because I mean it's space and there's just a car going through it. So I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's not like Star Trek where you can see the stars whiz by as you travel, you know, because you're really not going that fast. But I mean, it did look cool with like the sun bouncing off of the dark cherry red roadster.
Tight. I'll have to go watch this. I didn't look into this, but
do you know why they did it?
To make it more exciting or something like that was his basic point?
No, they needed to prove to the military that it was capable of delivering a heavy payload into sufficient orbit to get it to Mars or even
So,
further.
I mean...
Well, that was the
of
point
those
of
could
the
be true.
exercise, but the reason that they sent the Roadster, the Tesla, into space was because Elon Musk is flexing on all other billionaires.
I mean, he could have been like, I'm going to send a cube of aluminum up there or whatever, but like, it's way cooler to be like, here's one of my awesome cars that I make with my other company. And it's playing some music on the radio while it goes. I mean, not that you could hear it in space, but I mean, whatever.
I don't know if this is true because I didn't fact check it, but like he also made flamethrowers and then like stamped the Boring Company on them or something like that.
I believe that's true. I don't know that it was part of the launch.
No, this is something totally different. But.
Yeah, I was going to say, normally you don't attach flamethrowers to your brand new, groundbreaking rocket of new technology.
He's been flexing in many different ways. Is basically the summary.
Oh, Kegels. He's doing Kegels to try and that's good.
I've lived like my span of life, I think we've seen like there's definitely been more billionaires in this time than in any other time, but like a lot of high profile billionaires in my time, and almost all of them have been the fucking lamest dudes. They're all dudes, almost all dudes. They've been so fucking lame. But Elon Musk is finally like, he's not ideal, he's not the best possible case, but he is like the only one that's on any kind of a level where it's like, that's exactly what I would do if I had $1 billion. Like, he's the only one who's doing cool shit.
Oh, for sure.
That's not just like bonus not point. Just to make more money.
Bonus points for you guys if you guess how he made his first million. Joe.
Oh, yeah, Joe. Do you know?
Do you know Joe? I'll give you a hint.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
I'll give you a hint. You deal with this company on what seems to me, as your roommate, to be nearly an hourly basis.
PayPal?
Yeah.
God damn it. Yep. God fucking damn it.
Yeah, that's his company. He thought of it. He was like, wait, people need to send money over the internet, and somehow no one else has thought of that yet.
Well, dear God, I assume he has zero control over it currently.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he sold it. He sold it.
I don't know that he really groomed his heir very well. He was probably a bit too busy trying to be a badass.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was probably like, "What?
Yeah,
you want to buy PayPal?"
He just took the money.
All he was doing was starting us out.
Yeah, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to space, motherfuckers. You can handle people's fucking credit card payments online on eBay."
He's like, on a side note, they don't actually have to like you. You're the only one in the game. Good luck. Bye. And just drop the mic, walk down.
Pro tip: you can do whatever you want. Fuck.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
I think the only other billionaire I like is Buffett, but only in old age. Like, he's just kind of like an old dude who does old dude things, and that's kind of like cute and old. And that, otherwise they all kind of suck, man. None of them are doing cool shit.
But like, if Popoff was to like change his tune in like 20 years, or I'm not sure how old he is, so he may not even live that long. Let's say 10 years. In 10 years, Popoff is like, okay, well, I was wrong, and I'll tell all these people that I was wrong, and that this is how things actually work after I've made all my money. Would you be like, oh, well, I mean, he turned it around there?
I don't know. Maybe? I don't know. I don't know if I'd be like cool billionaire. I'd be like decent bad person turned good person. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the deal with Buffett is that people think that he took his money from rich people, which is, I think, mostly true.
Yeah.
So gets a pass.
That's true. I mean, he also
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He also,
there are people like.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say there are people who like make money robbing the poor, and like if later they were like, oh yeah, sorry. This is how I invented pop-up ads. I apologize for that. I don't think that the pop-up ad dude's getting a pass, but nobody really understands how Buffett got rich, so
yeah,
they're like, surely he didn't rob me.
He's just basically like, I just buy the companies that none of you guys like, and they're all like, I guess that makes sense. I don't know.
It's super fucking cool to be rich and own a company, like to get rich by owning a company that no one knows what you do. Like, there's no way that a regular guy in the street, you're just like, hey, what does Berkshire Hathaway do? You're like, no clue. I have no idea. Is that a subdivision on the west side of town? Like, I don't know what that is. Is that a destination for poor people to go like on vacation in New Jersey? I don't know.
Is that like a discount Ben and Jerry's ice cream?
Yeah.
Berkshire Hathaway? Do they have the chocolate?
He's like, nope, $1 billion company, fucking crushing it.
Oh dear God.
But yeah, he doesn't do cool things. He's just like, he doesn't do anything cool with his money. I mean, he gives a lot of it away, which is cool. You know, if you have cancer or whatever.
I think like one big thing is like you expect. Part of the thing is like you expect that when you get money, this is at least kind of the common dialogue. Like I think we have like two dialogues, but like you know you do exactly what you want, and you do cool shit. And the problem is like the other narrative is maybe you become a bad person, but like really what happens is people don't do what they want and they become terrible people and they don't do anything cool. And so the sweet thing about Warren Buffett is he's not really doing anything that cool. But he didn't become a bad person. He didn't he wasn't a bad person to get to where he is, and he just does whatever he wants. And a lot of those things are just mundane and super funny, like his obsession with Coca-Cola. It's just like, that's such an old man thing. Like, that's tight. And it's just like, I'm a billionaire, but I really like to treat myself with a Coca-Cola every day. It's like, you could drink yourself to death in Coca-Cola. I mean, a common man could drink himself to death in Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Like, you could make a swimming pool of Coca-Cola and drown a bunch of hookers in it. But you don't. That's not your thing. That's cool. That's fine. You do your Coca-Cola every day. Cute old man. Yeah,
he's cool. Like Bill Gates is cool like that too. Like he got rich and did what you would hope somebody who got rich did. Mm-hmm. You know, like the difference between Elon Musk and Bill Gates is like Bill Gates is like the prudent version of getting rich. He's like, I am super rich, and I'm going to do everything I can to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, so
which is great.
With him, I agree, but I don't think he got there on his own, which isn't a huge detractor necessarily, but that's just why I think it's like slightly different. Like he even attributes it to his wife. He was like, yeah, I would never have done like 90% of this shit if my wife didn't convince me it's what I should do.
I agree, but like I thought Trey was just talking about like the fact that he kind of made himself rich by like finding a new product, right, and kind of developing with maybe a handful of other people. But for the most part, you know, computers would not be the same today as they would have been had it not been for Bill Gates. And
yeah, that's tight about him.
And
he made the money, and his wife
so, like,
just convinced him to give it away. But
he was still super young. He got out of whatever the industry was that he was in, right, when he was still super rich and very much on top. Then marries a wife that encourages him to actually be like a human.
Yeah.
And
and he's
successfully a human.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say that an electric car is not going to benefit humanity, but I mean, will it benefit humanity as much as trying to truly eradicate polio? Maybe not.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it though? I mean, I think.
Well, no, because
I think an electric car is going to save more people.
Good, clean electricity to power those cars. You haven't really solved the fossil fuel problem.
Yeah, but that's why he's also doing like batteries so that greener energy can be more reliable and stuff. So I think he is targeting it that way. He's like, well, we got to do the electric car and then also the energy shit.
Yeah. I think the electric car thing is just sexier, and you can do like.
Actually,
it's easier to make that like a consumer product.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll grant you that. I do think that of all the things he's chosen to go into, probably like a strong investment in battery technology is arguably one of the worst investment decisions, because I mean, that's one of those technologies that so much money has been thrown at for literally basically forever, because it's, you know, just such a useful technology. If we could ever really perfect it and get a large amount of energy into a very compact device that could be recharged quickly, but then not go too quickly as it's being used. You know, those are all very, very difficult things to fulfill at the same time. And what we see over the history of humanity is like just incremental advances in better battery technology, no matter really how much money we throw at it. There have been very few giant leaps forward in that field, like there have been for.
That's a jet engine, by the way, Trey.
Yeah, that is just the loudest noise I've ever heard.
Sounds like you like pulled out a drawer on a really old desk.
That's like a 1990s action movie's gun being put together. Like, takes 18 movements to get it ready to fire. Yeah, I mean, battery technology is one of those things that, like, no matter how much we want it to get better, we can't seem to throw enough money at the problem to get a huge, monumental breakthrough. Like, the best breakthrough we've gotten is lithium-ion batteries, arguably, which, require mining rare earth minerals to get like 50% better batteries overall, because they charge faster and can charge and can power things that require more power at once.
Yeah, I think he's I don't really know much about the technicals, but I've always seen him as like a big hype guy. Like which on a side note is like borderline offensive to the current system, which is awesome, because like in the current system, if you like purposefully bankrupt a company, that is itself a crime. Like, you're supposed to be making money for your investors, not screwing them over. And he has like very outwardly in the public sphere been like, if this company doesn't succeed, it's fine, we're just trying to make green energy better. And it's like, I don't think you can say that. Like, and he's just like, no, fuck you guys, like, we're gonna get the hype up, we're gonna like green shit up, we're just gonna green throw money, it's gonna be tight.
Yeah. I think that's what's badass about him, and why he seems to have some success, and why I think he'll continue to have success, is like the electric car thing. It's like, it's not genius to invent an electric car, right? Like, that we could have had electric cars long time ago.
Yeah.
But nobody wanted them. But he like, through that hype, and through him selling, like, dude, you're not gonna believe what kind of electric car this is. It's gonna be so dope. Now it's like shit tons of people are lining up to spend tons of money on electric cars that they're not going to get for years because of that hype. So now he's like, I mean, the Tesla is a cool electric car. There's not another cool electric car, even though there are many other electric cars. Right? It's like he made it cool, and now a bunch of people want it, and now he'll sell a bunch of them, and then that'll push the progress of that technology more than anything, more than any nerds like sitting in a lab, is if a shit ton of people buy them.
I think the other,
like, that's what pushes tech forward, is people buying them, not people sitting there thinking of things.
I think the other thing is that he gets a little bit into morals and like how this shit is important, but like I don't find him to be as much of like a judgmental kind of like moralist as like a lot of other people in the green shit is. And so it's like, he's like, hey, I'm not like saying that this stuff is like better than the alternative right now. I'm saying that like clearly the future we imagine has this stuff in it, so let's just get going. Let's stop pussyfooting, like, let's get to it.
I mean, I agree with that sentiment, and that it's led him to success, that in conjunction with his remarkable timing, right? So like, the huge reason why the Tesla was a viable success, right, was that enough incremental advances had been made in battery technology that an electric car could go 300 miles without having to be recharged, which was a key enabler for that product to be a viable option for the American consumer. I mean, and the same thing's true with PayPal, right? PayPal was perfectly positioned and perfectly timed so that it came available at the time that things like eBay required it to be available.
Yeah,
Same
I mean,
thing's true with SpaceX. NASA is ready to retire their shuttle program, and he's simultaneously developing replacement rockets that will, be able. I mean, it's a life story. It's like he has that book that Biff got in Back to the Future 2, like that sports almanac, and he knows, okay, well, it's January of 2018. I guess I got to go out there and make this thing because it's perfect.
Yeah, I think he's a really good example of like the difference in the discussion about like if success stories are luck or skill. And I think like it kind of shows that like, well, if you can have 3 incredible lucks, I think that's just, we could see it, but it's pretty insane. So like, a lot of the way people think about it is like, yeah, I mean, millionaires are clearly lucky, billionaires are clearly lucky, but like, there's a difference between somebody who positions themselves to be ready for an opportunity and somebody who just sits around and doesn't. And so, like, it's partially luck, partially that guy's fucking smart, a hard worker, doing badass things. Like, at the end of the day, I'm not like, yeah, I mean, that's cool that he's doing what he's doing, but it's just all super lucky. Like, I work real hard to grow.
I didn't mean to imply that it was luck on his part, although the second you bring up luck, the thought that comes to my mind is free will and is the entire...
Yeah, we're not going to get
exactly.
free will.
So let's not go there. But the other thing I wanted to say is I feel, and I could be mistaken here, but I feel like the last time I heard Elon Musk talk about the artificial intelligence he was trying to add to his cars that do the auto drive functionality, I believe that someone had asked him a question about whether he was concerned about the seemingly required moral programming that would be necessary to be built in there, so it could make the trolley problem sort of decision where, well, I could either hit this person or I could swerve to avoid them and hit this guardrail and wreck the driver's car. Like,
right.
The owner prefers the car probably not to wreck itself, but like everyone else besides the owner of that car wants it not to hit the person.
And he said...
And he said that I don't think we need to worry about that. He said something similar, as far as I recall, to what you kind of depicted earlier, where, well, the future definitely involves this technology. We should start working on it now, and we'll work out the kinks later. And it's like, okay, well, but the kinks that you're talking about working out there are whether or not a human life is saved or not, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think, like...
Hold on a second before you answer that.
Go ahead.
You can't have ice in a rocks glass next to the microphones.
I'm sorry, I just have ice in a normal drink, yeah.
You gotta it's gotta be yeah, so just careful with that. I mean, it totally sounds like fucking Dudley Moore is on the other side of his microphone.
Well, if you want me to.
Just like clank-a-day, clank. Okay, so sorry.
I agree. Like, I kind of take two approaches to like him responding to it like that. Like, firstly, I talked to one of the guys who is the head engineer of another company who's making smart cars, and he's not legally allowed to tell me this story, so I won't mention the name of the company that he's working for, but
his name's John Smith and his social security number is 643. Okay.
But he was touring some of the other company's cars, like as part of his job. He like went out and just rented them.
Competitive intelligence.
Yeah, and started driving them around. And he was like blown away by how stupid they were compared to like what his company was developing. Of course, he's like a little bit biased where he's coming from, so I like asked him to explain. And so basically, like, his company is not going to release smart cars until they're like stage 3. I think like there's 5 stages. Stage 3 is like something where you could theoretically take your hands off the wheel or something the whole time. Or something like, anyway, so
true auto drive.
Yeah. But like there's still a steering wheel. Like stage 5 is like there's no steering wheel at all. Like the car, you could never possibly drive the car. The car just drives itself. It only has like the machine. So like, anyway, so his company is not releasing until stage 3 because they're concerned about what you're talking about. Like they really want to make sure these kinks are worked out. And he drove a competitor's car, and the way it works is like, it can do a lane shift for you, so you just turn on the blinker and it will sense where the cars are around you and then automatically do the lane shift. But it's only a stage 1 car, which means you're supposed to keep your hands on at all times, and you're supposed to be the one in charge of if it crashes or not. And so if you hit the blinker and there's too many cars over there, it will try for roughly 30 seconds to merge, and if it can't, it will just turn off the entire auto drive feature. So the way the base car works is like you could have your hands on the steering wheel and it will keep you in the lane like automatically. Mm-hmm. But in this situation, if you tried to get into the other lane, it would turn that whole system off. So imagine that like you're in the middle of trying to get into the other lane while you're in the middle of a turning curve. Mm-hmm. It would just turn off, and then you just like drive straight into like the next car over in that lane that you're turning into or whatever. So it's just like, I agree that a lot of these problems are insane and some of the companies are handling them totally stupidly, but in his defense, there's a lot of these people who are like sitting around and they're trying to like predict how people are going to react, and like they're really worried about getting into the market because like if one smart car crashed, they were convinced that it would set back the whole smart car.
Would their company be sued?
Yeah, or
is their company responsible if it's a stage 4
right,
car
yeah.
that's doing most of the driving for you?
And so they're just like so overly concerned about the problem that they didn't even take a chance. And I just see the way he answered that question is more of that. He's just like, well, it's not like I'm trying to be blasé about this. Like, we need to fucking solve these problems, but we also just need to make the car. Like, let's make the car. Like, let's get going on this. So it's like he knows that he can't predict how people are going to react, even if he made the perfect car. So he's just going to make the car. So I kind of see it in like that respect. But yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. The situation becomes even more complex. Like, let's rewind back to the situation where the car has a choice between hitting the person and swerving into a guardrail and wrecking the car and possibly injuring the driver. You know, there's the one dichotomy of we all know how you feel if you're buying the car, but we also know all how we feel if we're not the driver of the car and we're the person walking. What happens now if you further obfuscate the situation and say, well, the car is 75% sure there's a person there, but it might not be because we don't have enough information. We can't validate with certainty that that's a human being there. Now what decision should it make?
Also, I think some of those are like even worse too. Like some of them have said like, what if your car recognizes that there are two people in the other car and just one person in your car, so your car literally decides to kill you over the other two people.
Right, it's saying there are two human lives in the other car. It's doing a trolley problem.
Yeah, and the problem is like everybody wants those cars on the street. Nobody wants to buy one of those cars. And then we, you know, we'll also probably get to a point where the government tries to mandate that we buy certain types of cars at a certain point, and then there's
part
that
of me,
too.
So, part of me feels like the whole dichotomy of like no one wants to buy the car, but everyone wants an auto drive car to work that way problem to be kind of false, because like in the case that your friend was testing the other company's car that was a stage 1 or whatever, right? It's not like the manufacturer was required to disclose the fact that, oh, if you try and use the auto lane change assist feature and it times out, that the auto drive is just going to go off. Like, that's something that, remarkably, I'm sure, the market has determined, oh, well, the consumer can figure that out, and we're not required to disclose that. And similarly, it's not like we're going to make it so that Ford has to say, oh, by the way, if there's ever a trolley problem situation, you should know your car's going to pull the fucking lever. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the government's going to go. I mean, at each stage of that these cars have progressed, the government's been involved in regulating them, and so those questions are discussed by.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I mean, Tesla literally
the whole deal with
released pushed to their cars, because you know they have the ability to do this with their cars. They pushed to their cars the ability for it to do the auto drive functionality. Like, you could, while driving on the freeway, switch it over to auto drive and it will stay in your lane for you and things like that. And they pushed that to their cars of a certain model type and forward just automatically overnight. It's not like the Highway Safety Transportation Administration actually reviewed that update before Tesla pushed it out, I'm sure. Because if the FDA is not monitoring, you know, like homeopathy, I'm fairly certain we're not monitoring auto drive cars. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, they are. There are
a few states.
The clearance is further forward. Tesla can do more, is allowed to do more than they are actually capable of doing. Like, the government would allow them to do more if they had the technology to do it. So when when something like that happens, that's like already cleared.
So
if that makes sense, it's not like a vote. Like, they didn't call California and say like,
to no regulation to me. Like, the fact that like if a company has a capability to do something, that they're free to do it unless the government has stepped in and expressly forbid it, means that
no, that's not what I mean.
We're not gonna.
No. I mean, what would be an example? That has been discussed and approved. Later down the line, they got the technology in order, and that's when they implemented it. It's not like I wasn't saying that they
approval or whatever to push.
Yeah. So the AI cars have parameters that they can function in. You are allowed to sell a car that has self-driving features. You're not allowed to sell a car that doesn't have to have a driver in the passenger seat. Mm-hmm. I think right now we're at you can't sell a car that doesn't have a steering wheel, and I can't remember. I think brakes and gas also have to be there.
There are also state regulations. I think California is actually outlawed.
It's all state regulations.
Yeah. Well, that's my point.
It's all state regulations.
That was in fact my exact point. Is that it's not. So every car that gets released to the American public goes through a highway standards and safety administration. I forget what the stupid federal agency is named, but they go through a standard series of crash tests. Now, it's arguable whether or not those crash tests are really indicative of the overall car safety, but the fact is that there's a federal standard that every car goes through. That is not the case, though, with safety standards and code feasibility standards for what the actual automation is doing, right?
Yeah, like there's nobody who has as of yet dictated if it's legal for the car to decide to save people based on race or age or
what the standards are for an auto lane change assist. Like, can it time out and just be like, okay, auto drives off without telling you? Like, no, there's no law that says that, because it would all have to be specifically written, and the technology is developing faster than our amazing lawmakers can keep up with, because they write a whole couple of bills a year.
That's stretching it a little bit. Oh dear God.
But I do think that, like, sometimes Sam Harris gets into the AI discussion on his podcast, and I kind of roll my eyes a little bit, because I feel like it's pertinent, but it is still very abstract. When it comes to auto-driving cars, we're literally, we are in the Wild West, and anyone who wants a horse and a gun can have one, as long as they have the money to pay for it.
I think I don't think it's as open. I don't think I wouldn't say it was the Wild West, but the more important question is what's the problem with the car deciding that? Right now, if you're driving a car and there's a person in the road and you have to decide whether to kill that person or put it into the guardrail.
Oh, I'm not
or if a machine is making that.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's
why is it a problem
for
with
a machine to make the decision. I feel like what we should do, though, is come together and say, across the board, if you're making a car that's making decisions about decisions akin to the trolley problem, we expect you to build the programming in this way.
Right, but we don't expect people to make those decisions.
We don't, but we're not talking about building people. We're talking about building cars that are making decisions based on pre-programmed logic. Not
right, but I'm saying if the question hasn't been answered by people at what to do in that situation, isn't it further a further stretch to regulate what a machine would do in that situation?
I mean, maybe other people feel differently. I don't know how you feel, Joe, but I feel like that's kind of a false comparison, because you don't program people with rules that are very hard and fast and hierarchical, right? Like, people develop their own set of heuristics and ways to make fast decisions over the course of their life based on their experiences, and you cannot override that experience like you can with a computer program, which you're literally, potentially you could throw out the old computer program, rewrite it from the ground up, and define the explicit rules for every conceivable situation if you had enough time to write all those rules out.
So I I'm with Danny, and I would assume that you're not taking that to a weird extreme, Danny, where like if somebody programmed like save 1 over 100 every time or something into the machine, and we just had these cars like plowing through busy streets just to save the driver or something, then people would be like, whoa, what the fuck are you programming that for? But like in the basic decisions, yeah, like I kind of agree. It's like, if that programmer, I think should be public debate about it as it happens, but it's not like a group of people getting together and being like, let's go by numbers. Like that seems like the most reasonable thing to do is like, wrong. It's just, I guess it's just like, if they did things that society didn't think was okay already, then that'd be not cool. But if they're just doing what's in the gray area, I don't know that I'd be like that upset about it.
Well, I think you just set up a test akin to the crash test, right? You say, this is the test your car has to pass. It has to go 50 miles an hour down this road. We're going to throw at it a test to determine whether or not it can detect the humanoid thing in front of it, identify that successfully, and avoid hitting it without making, taking too long to make the decision so that it would actually hit the person before it could actually successfully turn or stop.
Right.
You just set up parameters that they have to stay within. And you can't...
Yeah, that's my whole point, though, is if humans don't know the parameters, how are the computers going to know the parameters? Like, how could we expect a computer to make decisions that humans don't agree on?
Well, because humans are not if-else statements or switch case statements that, define all the possible outcomes and then have a else catch loop that says, well, if none of the other things that I predefined you to take an action, that I predefined an action for you to take have come true, then do this. That's not how humans work. Humans make decisions based on their life experience. We can't pre-program them.
Okay, here's what I'm saying, though. Does it put the car into the guardrail, or does it kill the human? Does it kill the person in the street?
I'm saying we should decide that as a society and mandate that every self-driving car follow that rule. And that Mercedes...
Okay, but if I'm driving down the street, do I hit the person or do I put it in the guardrail?
I'm saying that we don't have the capability of legislating that because we can't empirically say that instruction has successfully made it into your brain and altered the way that you think sufficiently to the point where you will actually make the decision that we told you to make, which is not the case for a self-driving car.
I'm not saying that the cars don't need to be programmed. I'm saying that as a society, we can't answer that question.
I think that as a society,
if we're just talking about you and
I think that's what we're saying when we say that if we're not the purchaser of the car, we all know how we feel about how the car should behave in the case where it's about to hit a person or about to hit a guardrail. And
I don't think we do. What's the answer to that question?
I think that if we're not the purchaser of the car, we all want it not to hit the person. That's kind of my point.
Do you think so? I wouldn't say that's definite. I mean, maybe some people think like, well, I don't want his car to run the guy over in the street, but I don't want my car to turn into the guardrail.
If we're the
that's
driver
part of
or the
it.
purchaser, like it's
right, but the cars are all the same.
With the lever and not pushing the fat guy over the bridge, right? Like if you ask the trolley,
but it's not because all the cars are the same. That's like, it's not the trolley problem because in order for me to tell you to have your car drive into the guardrail, my car also has to drive into the guardrail. If we legislate it, then there isn't a purchaser of the car because eventually we will all be in the same car. If we legislate it, if we legislate it, I think we would make it so that the car runs over the person in the street. Right?
I feel like it's more, if we legislate it, that it's more akin to mandating that everyone is required to pull the lever to divert the trolley and not hit the 5 people, as opposed to mandating that everyone is required to push the fat guy over the bridge to stop the train, which, like that's the dichotomy of the trolley problem, is that if you ask it the first way and it's pull a lever to save the 5 people, almost everyone says, oh, you should obviously pull the lever and save the five people. The second they have to directly kill someone, or I guess in this metaphor, directly put themselves in danger, they don't want to do it. But the point is that as a society, when we're making the decision, it's more like the lever scenario, at least in my brain.
I see why you're saying that if you're talking about someone else's car, but if you're talking about your own car, then it's pushing the guy over the bridge.
Okay. I just want to be clear because I'm confused. Are you guys saying your car gets damaged versus person dies, or are you saying
no? We're saying you go over a cliff versus somebody who's in the street for whatever reason.
Sure,
gets killed.
Okay, I thought you guys were literally debating the car damage one.
Oh,
and I was like,
yeah.
I really confused.
No, surely.
Trey, do you feel like there's a debate about whether or not people feel like, I don't want a fender bender. I'd rather kill the people.
No.
Okay, good.
No. I think the question is, does it kill the driver or does it kill somebody who's on the street?
Yeah.
Which we haven't solved that problem. Humans haven't solved that problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Because it's just as soon as you talk about this, like, does the car run the person over, or does the car put you into the guardrail? The question is, like, why is that person in the street?
Okay.
Why is that person in the middle of the highway? Shouldn't the car kill the person in the middle of the highway, not the person who's driving legally and abiding by all the rules? Because if that was the case, then I could just kill people by running into the highway.
Well,
right?
Let me put it this way. This is something I'm going to steal from Dogma Debate. If I'm standing on the sidewalk in San Francisco, and it's obviously a very hilly town, right? I am standing on the sidewalk outside of a coffee shop that I just got a coffee from, and I notice that there is a stroller that a mom has inadvertently let go, and it's now rolling down the hill towards me. I have an option to stop it or not. I might get hurt if I stop the stroller, but I will almost certainly save this baby, or what I presume to be a baby inside the stroller. Am I a bad person if I take a step back and let that stroller go by? I think that I am, because as a society we all feel like that baby isn't at fault for rolling down the hill, and that it is generally a good thing if a human sacrifices their life to save another human life. And I think that...
Agreed. Not the same thing, though.
Well, so let me take it full circle. I think that the same logic of it's generally a good thing if one human would rather sacrifice their life to save another human's life, just even at the 1-to-1 scale, I think that most people agree that that's a good act and something that should be admonished.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't help this problem at all, because why can't the person in the middle of the road sacrifice their life to save the other person?
Especially since they're the one who created the situation.
Because they're powerless, like the baby in the stroller rolling down the hill in San Francisco.
No, but I mean, Trey just came up with a perfect reason why they're not. The second that all cars are programmed to do this, you could run into the middle of the highway to kill people.
Okay, but there would never be a situation where someone, like, mechanical failures would still, in theory, exist, right? So a car could still break down. And a person could be walking across the highway, come to a section where they can't walk on one side of the road and have to cross the highway. Like, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, you can't assume that the pedestrian is the one in the wrong for being on the roadway.
I agree.
And that as a society,
but you can't assume that they're not.
Well, no.
Are we? I've seen people get run over in the highway several times.
I know, and I actually didn't know that. I've seen someone get hit by a car, and it sucked, and it ruined like a year of my life because I kept thinking about it over and over again, and that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, don't become an EMT then. Don't do
that. But that's kind of the point of what I'm making is how do you legislate if we decide wholesale as a society the car is going into the rail or that the car's running the person over? If we make a decision either way on that, then roughly half the time that car is going to make the wrong decision.
I'm sorry, I don't follow that logic.
If we decide that the car is always going to go into the rail, then I can run into the highway and kill someone, and the car will have made the wrong decision in that case. If we decide that the car is going to run the person over, then when the baby in the stroller comes flying down the hill, the car is going to run it over, and it's going to have made the wrong decision in that case. So humans make those decisions based on a number of factors, but no one is held responsible either way because that's a kind of decision that you cannot make beforehand. Why would we think that why do we think we could program machines to make decisions that we personally can't even make?
Well, I mean,
after all this time, I don't know. I don't know how we would legislate something that we couldn't all agree on as people, anyways.
So, I think we have generally agreed that pedestrians have like the right of way, right? Like even if they're not in a crosswalk, if they're in the middle of Manhattan and they start crossing the street, I'm not allowed to hit them with my car. And if I did, I think there are whole movies made about the subject actually. Even if I did, and they had deliberately walked out into the street and gotten hit by my car, that I'm responsible because a pedestrian has the right of way all the time, every time.
Not on a highway.
Yeah, so I don't agree, and it drastically changes with pedestrian right of way, and it drastically. No, that we have agreed that that's how it is and should work. That's how you started that statement, did you not?
Isn't that a law in almost every state that I'm aware of?
Yeah, did you vote on that law?
No,
so
I didn't.
How did we agree to it?
That's a legacy. It's a legacy law built into the society that I was born into.
Okay, so
I haven't voted to overturn it.
As deciding to you?
I haven't voted to overturn it. So in a free society, a democracy, that we don't vote on every single decision, then yeah, it has sort of been decided by me because I haven't actively campaigned against that.
Right, but that's not always. Let's make
really
clear that that's not always the case. The pedestrian does not always have the right of way. Let's make that clear. That we're talking in hypothetical. On the highway, the pedestrian does not have the right of way.
Yeah, I don't know the particulars of that law. I do think
that
most people...
You're not allowed to walk across the street, to walk across the highway.
So
in interstate.
By that, do you mean if I'm a driver and someone is walking across the highway and I hit them, that I'm not legally responsible? Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's correct. On a highway, that is correct.
Okay.
If you're drunk, you'll be in, you'll get into trouble. If you were in some way breaking the law and you hit them, then you could be held responsible. But if you're driving on a highway, driving the speed limit on a highway, and you hit someone, it's not against the law. If that person was on the highway, because you're not allowed, pedestrians are not allowed on the highway. You see the signs, no parades, no
we don't have to
skateboarding, whatever that comes.
No parade signs
signs
in Washington. We allow parades every day. Actually,
on the highway.
Yeah, no.
I'm talking about the signs on the highway.
No. Actually,
I don't know. I know for sure because I've been arrested on highways. I've been arrested on highways.
Oh, really?
Is how I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I've never been familiar with that law. The law I always grew up with was that a pedestrian has the right of way and that you can't hit them with your car.
Yeah,
legally.
in the city.
Well, no,
on city streets.
I've always heard that the rule is across the board. I don't doubt that that you're accurate in your statements, though.
Yeah, that becomes important because hitting a pedestrian on a city street is a far smaller problem for AI to deal with, right? Because if I'm driving 25 and there's a pedestrian in the street, it's not a he dies or I die situation.
Well, actually,
but on the highway that it is.
I would argue that the identification problem becomes much more difficult. Like the idea of how sure are you that the thing in front of you that you've detected is a human being? You know, that becomes more difficult, I think, in a city than it does on a highway where you're less likely to have things that are rather varied in height. You know, like, which would make a human relatively easy to identify, I would think, right?
Yeah, you're moving quite a bit faster, and the distances are greater,
right?
And the rise and fall is greater. But
sure.
Again, that's a technology problem. The question, what we're discussing is how the car is going to make moral decisions, and whether or not, as humans, we can program machines to make moral decisions. And so,
well, let me point out though that part of the thing that makes it so that we are more forgivable for a human driver than I think we ought to be for a automated driver is the fact that, you know, for a human being to respond to almost any stimulus, it's something like 500 milliseconds, which may not seem like a whole lot, but a half a second is certainly potentially the difference between hurting and killing someone, and, you know, possibly the difference between getting in an accident and not, and that we can expect a computer to react much faster than a human could.
Yeah, but again, we don't know what the answer is. We can expect the car. I think expecting the car to make the decision that it's programmed to make is far simpler than knowing what decision we want the car to make. Here's what I would say. I am against any kind of the kind of moral legislation into these self-driving cars, that every time it sees a human on the highway, it puts the car into the rail, or every time it sees a human on the highway, it runs it over. What I think would be a much better, the power on those decisions, I think, should be in the hands of the car manufacturers, because to save the most lives, the car would want to make whatever the best decision was based on the car's ability and road conditions and whether or not there are other cars around it. I think that the technology is going to decide what to do.
Oh, okay, that last statement kind of confused me.
Okay, so if the car, it essentially is the same decision that I make. If I'm driving 70 down the highway at night, and there are other cars on the road, or maybe I'm on a curve where there's like a huge drop off, or there's a guardrail there. If I'm driving 70 and I come around a corner and I see a human in the road, my decision is, am I going to is it a high chance that I will kill myself if I swerve to not hit this human? And if it's true that me swerving to not hit this human is going to cause probable death to me or to other cars around me, then I'm going to hit the human. Right? I'm basing that on how fast I'm going, if I think I can stop, what are the road conditions. I'm deciding that I'm making that decision. And the car, you know, the technology, once we're there, we'll be able to decide, can I attempt, what's the odds of me living if I attempt an evasive maneuver here? It's the same decision when we see a deer in the road. Do we slam on the brakes and maybe roll the car, or do we plow into the deer, probably kill the deer and probably wreck the car, but hitting a deer is safer than pulling off of the road going 70?
Right. I guess the thing that confuses me about your statement is that, like, it almost sounds like you're thinking that I wasn't thinking that the automation should take all of those factors into account. Like, I think it should take into account road conditions and how fast it's going and how many cars are around you and how likely it is you will go into an uncontrollable spin and cause a compounding accident that involves multiple vehicles and may end up killing a person anyway. Like, I think it should consider all of that and should be able to do that much faster than a human, and that after all that is taken into account, when we have a probability of, when we have a split probability of we can only be 80% sure that we can avoid this crash and not hurt anyone, should we still do that? And I think that we as a society should get together and say that this isn't up to the manufacturers, because my entire point is that the manufacturers have a bias built in to try and protect their customers, and or at least make it seem to their customers that they're protecting them above other people, and that in these corner cases where it's it could go either way, and maybe we'd forgive a human in either direction. The point is that, like, it's not a human, so the 10% discrepancy of which way should I go shouldn't matter, and that we need to set a guardrail to say, well, I mean, if you're 80% sure that you can avoid a crash without causing additional problems, you should do that. Or maybe the cutoff is you only need to be 60% sure. But, like, I think that those are things that we need to get together as society, and I do think we should set rules that go across manufacturers, just like we do.
Who are we going to trust to make that call, though?
I mean,
like, is it 80% or is it 60%? Who is able to make that decision?
I mean, I don't think that it would be so much more difficult than saying that your car has to perform within the specifications when it's going X number of miles an hour with X number of pounds in it, right? Like, it has to make the impact last X number of milliseconds so as to spread the deceleration over a long enough time to avoid injury to the passengers inside.
I don't know. Those are decisions those are the things we leave up to the car maker, though.
No, actually, like, we give car manufacturers specifications that they must fall within.
We tell them what the test is.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you're right. We tell them what the test is, and they're aware of the ramifications of not being as good at passing that test as their competitors are, because they're going to get a 2-star crash rating instead of a 5-star crash rating, right?
Right. Right. But we set the parameters. Line. Right.
Okay.
I mean, well, I think.
I don't know.
But we don't legislate. They don't make cars that are like the safest possible car.
Sure, okay.
They make cars that pass those tests.
So we're talking about the difference between saying you must make a car that does this, as opposed to we have this test and you're all going to be compared on the same test, and we're going to publish your results and make them public. I guess, to me, while many people would consider that a very significant difference, I think either one of those would be a huge step forward and really alleviate my concerns, like, 90%, right?
Well, I'm fine with the consumer information idea. I think that's like a big point of the government, is to make sure that the playing field is as even as possible by informing the consumer. So having these tests that are like, hey, just to be clear, Ford cars are going to save a pedestrian over you, and just to be clear, like, Chrysler is going to save you over the pedestrian. Like, that's great. And we also tested Ford cars, and, like, they're not that good at it.
Well, like, no, yeah, I think the test awesome. They would publish would be like, hey, so we tested Ford cars, and, as long as you look exactly like a human crash test dummy, you're not going to get hit by a Ford auto drive car. But, I mean, if you're anything else or you're fat, sorry, because it's not going to accurately detect you. I feel like that's an important thing to publish.
Yeah, for sure, because, like, that's part of the importance of, like, regulation, is, like, that company could be like, this car is totally looking out for pedestrians, and it's not. And it's like, how can the average person test that besides, like, trying to run over pedestrians?
Right. But, so part of that, though, also says, to what specification does a car have to be built? And this gets back to the stage 1 through stage 5 auto drive cars, right? to what specification does your car have to be able to detect a humanoid in front of you before you can say that it has that feature, right? And again, we get into this, where's the cutoff discussion. And I think that that is a useful thing that we should have, because we shouldn't allow just any car company that wants to say, we have an auto drive car that won't hit people. We shouldn't just allow them to say that unless we somehow can verify that they can, in fact, detect people in front of you and not hit them.
That's fair, because that's like those safety standards we were talking about. But, like,
okay,
I think Trey's point still stands that, like, you, me, and him, I don't even think any of us agree with each other on how we would deal with a 50-50 situation between a pedestrian and you risking your own life, pedestrian versus driver. So it's like, why are we getting together as a society to decide that rule if we clearly as a society don't know how to make that rule? That's what he's saying. It's like it would be just as much of a coin toss probably if, like, the engineers did it. Like, we don't know how to make that decision. We don't agree with each other. We probably don't agree with ourselves. Like, that's very, very different than, like, we've done the statistics, and a car that can detect people 97% of the time is 14 times safer than an average car. So while you might be scared about that 3%, it's a much safer car. We're going to let them on the road.
Or it is safer to who, though? That's the whole discussion.
Well, it's safer than a human driving a car.
Safer to,
like,
the other humans around the car?
I don't know.
Or safer to the
safer
driver?
To all of the humans, the humans, like, in the country.
We are not,
like, the whole idea of this is that less people die when we move to AI cars. So, like, it's not going to be zero, but
we're not,
like, just people driving cars on the highway run people over, kill people all the time. If a AI car is better at detecting people in the road than a human is, then shouldn't we move to that, even if that technology isn't totally ironed out? But if the car performs better than a human, then it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be good for everyone.
Yeah, I don't think we're not objecting to the safety standards. We're objecting, I think, if I'm in agreement with you, Trey, to the trolley problem.
Well, so let me reverse the question on you guys then. So let's say that we have objectively tested all cars from a certain brand. We'll say Ford, because they made the car that I own that breaks frequently. So Ford,
or daily.
We have validated that Ford has miraculously come up with an algorithm that can 99% of the time accurately identify a human in front of them. And that it can also, based on current road conditions and the current car's status, including speed and other things like that, that it could accurately determine whether or not it could avoid an accident and also simultaneously avoid killing that humanoid that it's successfully detected.
Gotcha.
So we've verified that it can do that, and that it can do it fast enough that it can make the decision. Do we not then further agree that we should make it a rule that it should not, that if there's a clear decision, like, is it 5 people that are walking across the road, and at that point it should not kill the 5 people?
Yeah, again, so, like, there are some questions that start to get into the realm of, like, we as a society have agreed. But when you're talking about pedestrian versus driver, I do not think we've agreed, and I think there's many reasons that situation completely changes the question. So it's not as simple as, like, pedestrian right away, conversation over, bro. We decided, bro. Like, no, we didn't.
I agree. I've moved on from that. I'm saying, okay, it's 2 pedestrians. Like, I do feel that we should, like, if we have great accuracy with our detection, and we have great ability for the car to be controlled by computer, that at some point we have to address the question of, We don't want one manufacturer to say, well, I'm going to kill one person but not kill two people, and then another manufacturer to say, I'm going to kill 3 people but not 4 people. Like, I think that at some point we should get on the same page there.
Why would we not let them do that? Eventually, won't whatever car is best win? Won't we find that number ourselves? If we don't know what that number is, shouldn't we let car companies do what they think is best, and then the market will decide what that number is without legislation?
No.
Does that make sense? What if we all said...
what you're saying. I'm saying that that situation, to me, would seem to create a marketplace that was skewed towards never saving the person or never saving the people until it got so ridiculous that no one is in question about whether or not the people should be saved. You know, until it's 300 people that you're going to mow down at once, and everyone's, okay, fine, we'll save the 300 people, and we should always make that a rule that the car should do that.
Well, again, I think those are two very different things. I'd be very surprised if you couldn't get extremely high agreement on numbers like 1 versus 100, mm-hmm. and I would be very surprised if you got any agreement on numbers versus me and my children of a family of 3 versus, a family of 4 versus 5 people on the street.
I agree.
And
but
so
to say that we can't legislate that at all, just because there's a heap versus a pile of sand problem, I mean, that seems odd to me. It seems like we could agree with a very high limit now. We could all get on the same page in terms of 100 and set that as a baseline rule. And then as the technology improves, we could revisit that. And if society has changed their mind and said, okay, well, let's lower that.
I guess I'm confused. That's what we said, and what you said was that you want to not let them on the road until we've decided those numbers perfectly. Is that not what we're arguing about?
I thought the question was whether or not we need to regulate it before we can approve it. And I see what you're saying, Dan. My problem with that though is we don't know if the answer should be 2 or 3 or 4.
Right. But we know the answer is not above 300, is my point.
Yeah, but no, and
again, we're fine with regulating that.
No car company is going to make a car that protects itself over 300. All of these car companies are going to try to make the car that sells best, that works best in the market, that saves the most number of people, while still protecting the drivers.
I'm just not sure that's true. Like what we've seen with safety automation technology in cars released over the last few years has been a preference to try and protect the driver, give them blind spot detection, which ancillarily, protects drivers around you. But I don't think that technology was implemented with the marketing idea of everyone driving around you will be safer. No, it was marketed with the idea of you will avoid getting into accidents that you otherwise would have gotten into had you not had a blind spot detector.
Yeah, but you don't want your car to kill people. Like, being able to kill no one would be the best for these cars, right? You don't want your car to kill you, but you also don't want your car to kill somebody else. So if you made a car that would always kill people on the street but save you, then you would be then people would say, like, oh, well, all of Ford cars just murder people all the time. I don't want one of those. And if you made a car company that always killed you and didn't kill anyone on the street, then it would be like, oh, well, I don't want a Chevy because Chevy kills the drivers all the time. But there's some number in there that's right. Or there's, under certain circumstances, there's numbers that are right. Maybe it's you kill 2, but maybe you kill 3. But we, as a society, don't know what that answer is. If, though, we let the car companies, using their technology, figure out what is the safest use of their technology, what they think is going to protect the most lives, and one car company pits it at 2, and another car company thinks that it's best at 3 and another thinks it's at 4, over time, the car, the number that's right, whatever the right answer is, will prevail in the marketplace. And so we won't have to legislate that number because we don't know what that number is. If we knew what the number was, surely we would legislate it. But until we let these cars drive around and figure out what's the safest for everybody, we don't know what that number is. But if we just right now said, here's the deal, it's 3. You can, if any more than 3 people are on the road, you have to kill the driver. That might not be the safest thing, and we might kill people needlessly because we made the car companies build a car that wasn't as safe.
Are you proposing that the marketplace, which is, by my understanding, primarily driven by what can make a company the most money, as to Joe's earlier point of it's the CEO's responsibility to increase value of the company for its shareholders, right? That's what the marketplace is actually driven by. Are you supposing that system, that market system, would naturally flesh out what would be the safest car automation?
No, we wouldn't let the car companies decide, but the car companies would be doing the research that we don't have now. Eventually we will know that a car that stops at 2 is the safest car. If we let some companies do 2 and some do 3 and some do 4 and some do 1.5, we'll figure out what that number is. But we don't know what that number is right now.
Are you using...
I'm not saying that whatever sells best wins.
Are you using the word safe as a proxy for preferred by
the marketplace?
By people? When did we get back
preferred
into
safety?
By people. Like, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so the making the decision about whether or not the car hits the person or drives into the guardrail.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because all of us will be driving these cars, that it's not about the driver or the person in the street, because we are essentially both of those people. Society as a whole is both the person in the street and the person in the car. So if you're driving the car, you want it to hit the person. And if you're the person in the street, you want the car to drive into the guardrail. But if we're everyone in America, some of us in the street at some times and some of us in the car at some times, we want the car that's the safest across the board.
Cool. I think that makes sense.
Does that make sense? So
you jumped to that a little bit quick, and I was lost originally, but I got what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that it's like whatever sells the best, we just let car companies do whatever they want. But I'm saying we let car companies do their best, and eventually we will figure out what that answer is. But how do we... I don't know that it's a good idea right now. That's what I was saying in the beginning is how do we legislate, tell the car companies to answer a question that we ourselves can't even answer?
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little bit confused because I feel like we all did previously agree that there is a theoretical number that we could all agree on, and that we do all agree that we don't have a final number as a society. And all I was proposing was that we should set some sort of a limit now to keep it from becoming a Wild West situation where it's literally just driven by whatever the market prefers, whatever people who are willing to buy cars right now that have automated driving on it will end up buying, which I do believe is what would happen if we left it simply up to the marketplace. So I feel like...
I don't know, that's not always I don't know that is the case. People want cars that are safe.
But, yeah, people want cars that are safe for them to drive. That's why they buy a car with a high crash test rating. It's not... Crash test ratings rate how safe the car will keep you and your family if you crash your car, not how safe it will keep the person you hit.
Agreed. But the... in the ad, if we're looking at an ad, and one car company says we have the safest vehicle, our vehicle is so much smarter, and we can identify a person in the street at 100 yards, and every other company can identify them at 10 yards. Or in the last year, Ford AI cars killed half as many people as Chevy's AI cars. That will increase sales of the Ford car. There's other because society as a whole wants to be safer, society's safety has an effect on that marketplace.
I guess, so let's imagine that I created a car company that made amazing cars that kept everyone or everything that I ever was to happen to strike with that car very safe. But it did so at the cost of potentially making everyone inside the car more liable for injury. I could accurately describe that car as being safer than any car that had ever been made. Because from the perspective of someone who's hit, it is. Right? So, again, what we're talking about here is what a company can accurately describe as being safe. And that's where I think the question of we can set a theoretical upper limit now and then reduce that or adjust that as needed going forward. But to say that we'll let the marketplace figure it out in this brand new technology where it's a situation that, as we all agree, we as humans can't necessarily get on the same page because we think that the situations are too complex. I think that we can at least all agree, well, if it's 100 people, we shouldn't kill 100 people. Let's set the limit there now, and we'll lower it later. And I just...
Yeah, but it would be absurd to pass a law that said your car the number is 100. I mean, that would be an absurd law to pass. The only way that law is good is if it is close to whatever the right number is.
Isn't it an absurd law to pass to say you can't make a car in America that can go over 200 miles an hour as a car manufacturer? Because that's a law. All of them have
how is that an absurd law? I mean, I'm not saying it's absurd that you would make a law that said that your car couldn't kill
set the limit to absurd.
Yeah. If you made a law that said you couldn't build a car in America that could drive faster than 2,000 miles an hour, that would be an absurd law. The only reason that 200 is a reasonable law is because that's at the upper limit of what a car could possibly do.
Okay. Well, the law is actually, I think, 120 is where a V-chip typically kicks in on a car, which is well below what a car can physically and feasibly do. So the point is that we all agreed on an upper limit for what we want a car to go or be able to do stock from a manufacturer, and we set that as a limit. You can modify that car after you purchase it and keep it and avoid that limitation, but it's not something a manufacturer can just sell to you out of their factory. And that's all I'm discussing with setting an upper limit. But we set that law after years and years and years of people driving fast and us seeing what speed was reasonable. That we didn't make that law in 1920. We made that law because we saw all these people dying on highways, and we said, here's the upper limit of what a car should be able to do, because anything that goes faster than that, we see a huge uptick in deaths. We based that law off of data that we had gathered over years and years and years of cars driving as fast as the market wanted them to drive, which is the same situation we're in now. We don't know what the number is. So if we guess, then we're just making a law which might be the wrong law. I mean, if the law is 4, if we say that the law is 4, but it actually should be 6, and tons of people die because we're making these cars that are less safe because we're following an arbitrary regulation that we just set without any... I mean, we can't... If we knew what the number was, we should make it that number, but we don't know that right now. I mean, we came at that 120 from years of the market trying to figure it out. Right? That's where we got our speed limits and that's I would say that's a similar thing. I think that, I mean, I don't know the history of speed limits, but I imagine that we went through a similar scenario where we started high and reduced them gradually until we found a happy spot where people were relatively safe, but could still get to where they wanted to go in a reasonable amount of time?
Well, we started with no laws, and we let car manufacturers just made cars faster and faster and faster according to what the market wanted. And then we set a law based on the technology of cars and the speed at which we thought it was safe because of the research. And then we've changed those numbers, but we've changed those numbers because cars have changed. It used to be 55 used to be the speed limit across the board, because if an old car got into a wreck at 55, everybody was fucked. But we can drive 70 now because cars are much better at handling accidents. If they would have made the law 70 to begin with, tons of people would have died because they would have been driving too fast for the technology of the day. I mean, those laws have changed, but they've changed according to technology.
Okay.
And as we make AI cars, maybe in the beginning 5 is the number, but as cars get better, we can move it to 4 or 6 or whatever the thing is. I mean, I think the speed limit and the comparison between speed limit and number of people that you kill in, high is the same, because it's all about group. The speed limit isn't for me, it's for you. I can only drive 70 because I'm worried about your harm. I'm worried about hurting you. And I'm worried about you hurting me, which would be the same thing with these AI cars. I just don't know. I'm against regulating things for the sake of regulation, or regulating things that we don't understand, or putting laws into the books that might hamper technological advancement or consumer freedoms because we're worried about it. Plus, as soon as we have this debate where it's like, how many people should an AI car be able to kill? As soon as we have that debate, AI car sales are going to be depressed, because that's not good. People are going to see that and go like, oh man, these things are crazy. What are we talking about? 4 or 5 people getting killed? That's insane. These cars are crazy. And then we're not going to get them. And we're going to still have these cars that we have today, which kill people all the fucking time. We want AI cars. AI cars are going to be way safer than regular cars, but we have to convince people of that. And if we just make a regulation based on our guess that depresses sales and prevents AI cars from being sold, which it'll increase the number of deaths in this country. I'm pro-regulation, just not until we have the information, I guess.
So yeah, I guess that's just a fundamental difference between us, because I'm in favor of, let's regulate as much as is feasible and logical now. We'll set some high-level guardrails, and we'll keep people within those. And if we need to adjust those later, we can do that. But as long as we theoretically set those guardrails high enough that they're not going to stifle market innovation and things like that, that we can impose rules that will keep things from going crazy and keep a crazy company that has a CEO that goes off the rails. What if Elon Musk was not as admirable of a person as he was, and had made a decision to release a significant change to the way his car's auto drive behavior worked? I feel like we should have a law on the books that says, no, you can't do that. You have to stay within these guardrails. And I don't think that should be out of the question. I feel like, and further, I'm actually not sure that the history you laid out for how speed limits evolved with cars is 100% accurate. I believe that speed limits were actually very quickly introduced for what they called horseless carriages, especially in cities, because of the traffic problems that they caused with the horse-drawn carriages. It's always going to be a question of, I have to sacrifice some individual freedom to allow for the greater good in society. Like that's kind of the overarching topic that we're discussing here. And I don't feel like it should be out of the question or considered to be a killer of a new product to say, here are some general guidelines that we need you to stay within.
Yeah, so a couple of objections. So first of all, if Elon Musk made the number 100 tomorrow, and then one of those cars like swerved and plowed over 100 people and ended up saving the driver, I'm pretty sure he would face consequences of a legal kind.
I'm not sure we have laws on the books that would actually allow for that.
Civil trial.
Yeah, it's an LLC, almost certainly. As CEO, he would not be personally responsible for that. Almost certainly, they have all of their assets tied up in...
Well, it seems like what the issue then is that needs to change. Right? Like, it seems like you're kind of...
Wait, what did you think I was saying?
It seems like you're kind of regulating this backwards, where you're like, we should add more regulations instead of fixing the crappy regulations that we have with CEOs where they can't be responsible for making bad decisions that kill people.
Okay, well, I mean, I actually didn't propose an architecture for the regulations. I simply said that we as a society should come together, come up with a set of ground rules, and say that you, if you want to develop this new technology, have to stay within these ground rules. Is what I feel like I've been saying.
Yeah,
where are we going to get the ground rules?
What you just said. I agree that that's your argument. I don't see how that's not what, or goes against what I just said. If you want to outline that.
I mean,
Trey's question,
like the how, I guess, is what we're hung up on now, right? Like, you're saying that like I'm going about regulation perhaps in the wrong way because there are theoretical regulations that we ought to implement that would allow for better control of the root problem?
I think Joe's saying that he doesn't see a problem there, but if you do see a problem, I think he's saying that you should solve it a different way. He's saying if the problem is that Elon Musk can't be held responsible for the decisions that he makes about the cars that he builds, then we should deal with that, not try to regulate the cars themselves.
Yeah, just like if Elon Musk used his money to build a bomb and then just like put it in a city street and blew people up, he could be held responsible even though he's a CEO, even though he was using company money, even though he was using a company product. Like, there are just laws on the books that say you can't be a shitty person, and lawyers are fucking squiggly little worms, and they use things like the Commerce Clause in the Constitution to like explode the amount of punishment they can give to people and the amount of things that are within their jurisdiction. So my point is to say, if Elon Musk tomorrow did something as stupid and horrendous as inputting the number to 1 to a 100 and we had an accident, I am very certain that he would be put in prison. And if he wasn't put in prison, then that's not indicative of the further numbers that we should put together as a society. That's a problem with our CEOs and our other legal matters. Like, I just... If we can have somebody who can make a decision that is so clearly batshit crazy that no one's okay with and not be held accountable because of some weird regulation like that, does that make any sense? Am I making any sense?
I think I get what you're saying, but
yeah.
I would point out that if you were to change the rules that are set up in our country around the way a corporation is structured and the fact that an LLC limits the liability that its board members and CEO face in regards to the company's action, that action would have the effect of stifling market innovation much more significantly than trying to say, here's a crazy theoretical upper limit that you should know we're planning on revising downward later at some point when we better understand the problem, but here's a guardrail you have to stay within.
It's crazy that I'm arguing for capitalism at all in any kind of way, but here it is though. That's what capitalism, that's the role of capitalism in this.
What is to allow for market innovation by allowing for a company to develop something without having the person that's at the head of the company put their personal assets at risk?
No, if Elon Musk makes a car that kills 100 people, then no one's buying the Tesla.
Yeah, if
Elon Musk doesn't,
he should be personally responsible. If Elon Musk starts a company and gets investors to give him seed money to build a car, and that company sells a car that fails, his company should be held responsible, but Elon Musk, who may have $100,000 in his personal wealth, should not.
I really don't understand how those are the same argument in your mind. If you think that's what we're saying, then I don't know how we can come to any conclusions in this conversation. Like,
if the point is to make a safe car that people buy, I mean, if Elon Musk goes to jail or not, that's kind of that's an ancillary point. The point is that if you make a car that's going to kill 100 people, no one's going to buy it, so it doesn't matter.
And if
we don't need regulations to do things, that's the regulation on that is capitalism. Is that you can't make money by building a car that kills a bunch of people. And that's what I think the car companies should set their own rules, because they're the ones who know the technology and who are going to do what they can to make a car that sells. Especially given the fact that we have no idea what that number should be and that no one would agree on it. We would get into a huge fight. And again, it would depress sales of AI, which would kill more people in the long run, because we're not very good at having debates in this country.
Like, if everybody got together and like we agreed on 35 and it took us like 5 minutes to do that would make you happy? Like putting that law into effect? The number's 35? Because the issue I see with this, like, is if we, like, the second point that I was going to make is if we say the number's 35 and then Elon Musk tomorrow reprograms it and says it's 1 to 35 and that car goes and kills 35 people, now we really can't hold him responsible.
Yeah. And that car better kill 35 people.
Yeah, and before, we could almost certainly hold him responsible if our system makes any sort of sense. And
hang on, back up. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understood your premise of the story. So we set the law. Your car has a choice between killing you or killing 35 drivers.
And it kills 35
kill
people.
35 people.
No. We say
it must kill you and not kill 35.
Yeah, we say at 35.
And then Elon Musk does what?
Tomorrow he makes it the number. He makes it so that if your car is going to kill you or 34 people, it chooses to kill the 34 people, and he is now legally not liable because of that weird, strange number you passed.
Well, no. I mean, the legal remedy would be that he would be kicked out of his company. Then the board of directors would sue him for malfeasance and try and recover damages from him. But he would not...
What?
Well, I'm sorry, what?
If he built a car that met federal regulations?
No. If he built a car that... I thought what we were proposing was federal regulation was you must save the 35 people. Elon Musk has changed his car so it does not meet that regulation anymore.
No, he met it.
No. He's saying he meets it, so 34 people die.
Yeah.
If the number's 35, that means that the car will kill 34 people.
The car can.
Okay, and
it's allowed to kill 34 people. And if it does kill 34 people, then Elon Musk can say, like, hey, I'm following the law. I built the car that the government said I should build, which is at 35. If there would have been one more person there, they'd have been safe. But I built the car that you guys told me to build. And not only am I not responsible for the death of those 34 people, but if you think somebody is responsible, it's you. Because I was going to build a car that would kill only 4 people.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand. So society has agreed that 35 is the cutoff.
Correct.
And you guys are saying that now we're pissed off at Elon because it was 34 people that got killed and it wasn't up to the limit that we set, and his car made the decision that we told him his car had to make.
Okay.
And so we're upset.
Let's walk through this again.
For for following the law that we set forward.
If we're saying that we can't be upset at
if we pass no law tomorrow and Elon Musk makes the rule, he programs the car to choose the driver over 10 other people. Okay, so if the car is about to crash into 10 other people, it will still save the driver. If it's about to crash into 11, it will not save the driver anymore. He just arbitrarily does that tomorrow. What I'm saying is, in this current society, it is very possible that he would still serve jail time for a decision like that.
And I disagree with that.
Okay, so
either way, though, the car's not getting sold.
To me, the fix to that problem is our current society, not regulation. And here's why. Because if you regulate and you arbitrarily set the number at 11, just like he did, and then tomorrow he goes in and programs it to still save the driver at 10 people, then that accident happens. He now absolutely cannot be held liable because of your regulatory law. He didn't go over the limit. He's fine. He didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, but the majority of society agreed to that limit in our premise. Yes.
Yeah, but the majority of society, the vast majority of society, doesn't know what that limit should be.
No.
We don't know if it's 10.
The premise was that we had agreed as a society that the limit was X.
But we can agree to something.
That Elon accurately set the limit. His car yesterday, the day after he set that limit, as per federal regulations, killed X-1 people, and that you guys think that that's outrageous, that he should not be held legally responsible for that.
Earlier,
no, we're saying that he now won't be held legally responsible.
Yes.
Because society set that number.
But
society doesn't know that the number should be 10. Yeah, but that law would be could be wrong. It's arbitrary, and it doesn't serve to keep people safer. It serves to let people think that they're in control.
I don't know the point of arguing if we can't understand where each other's coming from. And you made a direct statement that we could set some arbitrary high number and decrease it with time, and we just gave you a reason why that was stupid, and then you pretended like you didn't say that. I don't understand what you mean if you think it's okay to arbitrarily set the number at 10.
Oh, okay, I get you.
What are you saying?
I get you. I'm saying you can't say the limit is not the limit. I'm proposing is that you cannot say that your car can kill more than X people and have that be okay as long as you're still protecting the driver. It's an upper limit. It's not that you must set it here. Elon Musk still has the ability to set his car's limit to 2.
Yeah,
if that's what he wants.
But if he sets it within that limit,
then his company could get additional market share by attracting customers that wanted a car that was safer for those around them. Like, nothing stops that innovation still.
But if it's better for if his company's going to make more money if they build the car that stops at 10, maybe his company knows if we build the car at 4, it'll be safer than if we build it at 10. But we'll make way more money if we build it at 10. And we won't be held responsible, legally responsible, or morally responsible if we set it at 10 because society put the number at 10.
So how
without
is that
a regulation,
than not setting a limit.
Okay, so
it's not. That's what we're saying is we shouldn't set a limit because the second that you set a limit, it frees every car company to build a car at that limit.
But every car company is free currently without a limit to set it as high as they'd like, as long as they think that gets them more cars sold.
Right, but now, if they build a car that kills a bunch of people, then they will have decided to do that. Right now, we don't know what the number is. We don't know what the right number is. But if we set the number at 10 and 10 people die, we can't be shocked, and he can't be held responsible.
Yeah, so
if there's no number, if he kills 35 people and there's no number, he can be held legally responsible, and people can hold that company morally responsible. But if we set the number at 35, then they won't be. Then there's no trouble for him to get in.
What's the grounds to hold him legally responsible if there's no limit? I don't understand that piece.
Because any other law. He designed a car that is willing to kill 10 people.
But he could just quite easily say the limit has to be somewhere in the program.
Yeah. He could.
Yeah,
I don't know that would win.
You didn't tell me what the limit had to be. And as you can see from this program, which is 40,000 lines long, good luck parsing through that and understanding that, jury or judge, that it's a complex set of scenarios that has to be laid out, and it has to be explicitly laid out. It has to be set with numbers that have cutoffs. That's
yeah,
the
and
nature.
If he's on the stand, then his attorney says this: "Why did you choose 10?" And he has to explain that right now, without any regulation. He has to explain, "We chose 10 because, according to these studies, and according to our numbers, and according to what the car can do, and according to this research, we think that 10 is the safest number." Or he has to say, "It was cheapest at 10." Or they bring somebody else in who was there making the decision, and they say, "Why did you guys choose 10?" And the design guy says, "We chose 10 because it made us the most money." And if that's the case, then he will be held responsible either morally or legally, or the car company will be held responsible. But if it kills 10, and 10 was the right number, then he'll say the reason we set it at 10 was because of this research. And if that's the number that they've found, then that's the number that it should be for now, until we get more research or whatever.
Just like
he would have to defend the number. If there's no regulation, Elon Musk has to defend the number that he chooses. But if there's a regulation, then he doesn't have to defend shit. He can just put the number at the upper limit and say that shit's on you because you set the regulation.
If there's no reason for us, in my opinion, to argue about the middle, it's the two ends, right? So, like, if let's say that you poll 90% of America instantly right now, I think their number would be somewhere around 1 to 3, something like that, right? Which means we don't know. And what me and Trey are saying is that if you stop the production of these smart cars to have that debate about the actual number, we're never ever going to get smart cars. The other alternative then is to set an arbitrary high number. And when you set an arbitrary high number, like 10, which is clearly wrong, right? And no one is happy with, you're just giving legal protection to somebody who could make a bad decision that nobody agrees with.
Are you giving legal protection to someone who didn't have it already?
Say that again?
Ford could be held legally responsible if they make the wrong decision and make a car that ends up being unsafe and causes accidents that wouldn't have otherwise occurred. But the worst thing that happens is that Ford goes under and can't sell cars anymore because it doesn't exist as a company.
So you're saying that if the owner of Ford, the CEO, knowingly made it that the wheels would pop off and kill the driver after 20,000 miles, he wouldn't be held in jail?
I'm saying that the owner of Ford would never be put into a position where he could be tied directly to that because he's not actually doing the deployment of code. That's the nature of a complex company.
These problems happen all the time. Ford makes decisions like this all the time. There's no law that says, like, if you make the clip slightly thinner and it saves you $3 a car, but 15 people will die because of it. There's no law that says you have to make the clip thicker. And it happens all the time. They make decisions and people die and they take them to court and they have to pay. I mean, we have civil cases all the time where the gas pedal stuck, or there was a problem with the rear differential locks. You know, we have these problems all the time. And in cases where the company, it's decided that the company made a decision that was negligent or harmful, they have to pay. It happens all the time. We don't have a law in the books that regulates each one of these little things. That's the system that we have now. And companies get black eyes when they make a car that is dangerous. Like there have been tons of cars in the past that have flopped, and Ford and Chevy and GMC have lost a ton of money because they made a car that had a flaw in it. And nobody went to jail, but they had to pay, and the car flopped. And it was bad for business. And these are the same rules that we have all the time. I mean, this happens all the time.
And I just think, like, in a scenario like this, when you're talking about something specific, if there was some coder who, like, literally made the number 100, I'm pretty sure that would not be classified the same as, like, yeah, well, we decided to shave off a little and we knew it'd be less safe. Or, well, we made, like, a bad design because we weren't thinking about it, but we weren't, like, trying to kill people. We were negligent. Whereas, like, this guy is literally saying it's okay for this car to kill 100 people over one person. That's not negligence. That's, like, why the fuck did that guy make that choice? Like, I think there's an entire tier of responsibility he's going to face that other people aren't going to face. Like,
it's reckless endangerment.
It's actually malfeasance, I believe this is the proper term.
And I think malfeasance is when you have
a knowing responsibility when you make that you don't fulfill.
Oh, I thought malfeasance was you had to have a mistake.
Huh. Maybe we could Google that.
I have no idea.
Either way, we don't regulate these things now. Why are we doing it on AI cars? We let the market decide, like, how far the gas pedal has to go down, or what the clearance is over the brake pedal, or, like, where the fuel lines are, you know,
like,
whether or not the parking brake catches fire. We let the market figure out all of those things now.
Do you think we should all get together preemptively and decide for the future, like, how much a company is allowed to save before it endangers people's lives? Like, do you think we could accurately decide that number? I just feel like overnight we'd have no cars for the next 3 years because we would just be like, 12 cents, $3, like,
$197.
And then if we pass
somewhere between 3 cents and $197.
Yeah. And then does that make any sense? Like,
I'm gonna take a short break.